We're starting a new series. Now, to be honest, I had a really difficult time figuring out what I would do, over the next weeks leading into the summer. I had several ideas, but some of them were just outlandish, and they were nixed. And then some people in the group, voices of reason, were kind of recommended that I do something a bit more grounding. Now, I think that this conversation that we're going to have tonight and God willing throughout the weeks is not an easy one. It'll sound easy, but it's not easy because it has to do with the core of who we are. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks was probably one of the most important thought leaders in the last generation, this past generation, in our generation. He was articulate, he was philosophical, he was bright, he was witty, he was British, so he had a nice booming accent. And one of the things that he was working on before he passed away was a curriculum that re-empowers Jews to feel a deep sense of connection with God. This is something that our day school systems have really failed. It's something that we as young adults have a hard time trying to grasp for ourselves. The curriculum was finished after he passed away. And the truth is that I don't really know who the people that put it together, but I thought they did a really poor job at putting together a curriculum. It's really more of like a source sheet with ideas, but with very little information as to how to actually learn these ideas. They're his ideas. So what I want to do is I've kind of like distilled it. This source sheet over here is not my own, even though it says my name on it. I composed it, I compiled it, but it's based on the curriculum. Okay, it's based on Rabbi Jonathan Sacks' 10 Paths to God. I took the most essential aspects of the conversation that he put together, and I distilled it. This was originally, the packet I have upstairs is 29 pages, okay, and this is 6 pages. You're welcome. And I figured that, and there's lots of conversation and icebreakers, and he even has a video that he made, which I would love to show you, but it's really slow. I watched it at 1.5 speed, and it wasn't fast enough. And I feel bad taking a man like that and speeding up his work, but if anyone wants that video or any other material, the additional material, you really want to delve deeper into the subject, I'm happy to send you the original material for you to kind of walk away with a more enriching experience. My presentation will be a bit more superficial, so I apologize in advance for that. We're a few weeks away from less than a few weeks away from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the month of miracles. The month that we're in right now is called the month of Adar. It's the month of Simcha, of joy. The Mishnah tells us, Mishnichnas Adar marbim be simcha. In the month of Adar, we're supposed to increase our happiness, our joy. We're supposed to be working towards achieving, expressing this deeper level of serenity and happiness. And today in the morning when I woke up, it was actually yesterday when I found out that Signature Bank and a whole bunch of other banks went under. I was panicking. A lot of friends were panicking. What do we do? Where do we go? How do we figure this out? Whenever banks in America crash, it's always bad for Jews. Right? I know that you don't think of it like that, but I do. It's also bad for Jews for not just because the banking system is crashing and that Jews are always associated with banks and banking in general in this country. It also has to do with the fact that the American dollar is weakened and that our influence as Americans is weakened and our ability to incentivize bad actors or even good actors becomes that much weaker. Our reach becomes weaker. And if it didn't happen in the month of Adar, I would have saw all of this whole weekend as a terrible contagion that's going to lead to horrible, horrible things. But the fact that it happened in the month of Adar, I'm confident that no matter how dark my thoughts may be or how twisted my mind may take the circumstances, I believe and I trust that in the month of Adar, no bad can happen to us. I believe that. And we learned that from Mordechai. We learned that Mordechai was 100% focused and clear, that there was no worry, there's no reason to be concerned with where our Yeshua, our salvation, would come from. It would come, and Esther had to make that determination as to whether or not she wanted to be the source for that. So I take on Mordechai's persona in the month of Adar, and I am not worried. I'm not concerned. I'm just focused on the mission of a Jew, and that is for me in this month to be happy, which is interesting because in the next month we transition out of the state of happiness, hopefully into a higher state, something called freedom, of being truly free, being carefree. The month of miracles, it requires, it's a miracle for us to actually segue from a place of happiness into a place of freedom. Now, let's just take a step back in history for a moment, okay? The Purim story happened how many years ago? Anyone know? About 2,400 years ago, okay? It's a long time ago, okay? 2,400 years ago was the first time that Jews dealt with the question of what does it mean to be a Jew. There were other times in history where we saw other people dealing with it, like Avram Avinu, Abraham, the Jews in the land of Egypt. But for the first time, from the time that the Jewish people actually landed in Israel, conquered Israel, established a home for themselves, built an economy, built a society, built the temple, a home for God, a permanent place, that took about 800 years to accomplish. And at the end of it, for the first time, Jews were asking, well, what does it mean to be Jewish without a homeland? What does it mean to have a Jewish identity without a how do we connect to God without a Beit HaMikdash? There's these things that you and I have, this Bet Knesset, we take it for granted that we have it as a place, a focal point, a place to remind us about the importance of community, the importance of getting together and doing things as a community, but they had nothing. It was broken. Imagine every single synagogue, God forbid, was just burnt, set on fire, gone. Where would we go? Well, we were prepared with COVID, with backyard minyanim and other things, but in their world, there was no way of serving God. And they started questioning their own concept of what does it mean to have a Jewish identity? What does it mean to be a Jew? And at the end of the Purim story, which was only 70 years of exile, this is the first generation born outside of Israel, okay, born in a strange land to them, with a strange language, strange culture, and Jews participated willingly in this massive feast, which was really a celebration of the fact that God was dead and that Jews were defeated. And Jews participated because, why not? God broke his promise. He told us that we'd be the chosen people. He told us we'd be a Mamlechet Kohanim, a nation of priests, and now we're just nothing. We're the laughing stock of the world. Do you realize that your book, your ancestors, tell the story of how God took you out of the land of Israel to be to be his nation, and what does he do? He rejects you. What kind of a God, an all-powerful God, doesn't have the power of protecting his people? Oh, we don't say that he couldn't protect us. He could protect us. He just threw us out of his house. How embarrassing that was for Jews leaving Israel, being brought to Persia in shackles. How embarrassing was it to lose all your possessions, your homeland, everything was just gone. So I could understand why Jews just said, okay, the game's over. Forget about it. It's over. But at the end of the story, right, which is why, I think we don't fully appreciate the depth of what Purim and this month is really, trying to express. We say that the Jews were kimu v'kiblu. They got up and they accepted something. And the Gemara tells us that this is the first time in Jewish history that Jews accepted keeping Torah, its principles, without any form of coercion. By Shavuot, Matan Torah, you had the light show, and God came down and he brought us the Torah, and it was so exciting and so powerful and so beautiful. We just read this last week's Parsha, that the Moshe comes down and he breaks the Luchot, right? We were forced to do it. It wasn't our choice. We weren't ready for that level of responsibility. Then Hashem calls up Moshe and he gives the Luchot again. Rashi says that, he makes a distinction. He says that the first Luchot were doomed to fail because when God gave us the first Luchot, it was with a LED light show. Is that John Stewart? Another Jew who's struggling with his identity. There are no accidents. There you go. Anyway, so I don't know who that was, but was that? Oh, okay, fine. Another Jew. Okay, great. What's that? Is that Apple TV? Okay, so you have a world that is. The Rashi tells us that we were destined to lose the luchot, the first luchot, because of ayin hara, because of the light show. And he says that the second luchot were given without a light show, so there would be no ayin hara. So what's the obvious question? What's that? Well, just start the second way. Don't do the light show. Forget about that stuff. We don't need that. It caused all this negative forces, these negative ayin hara. Just get rid of it, right? Just turn it off the screen. We don't need it anymore. Thank you. Okay, this place is very fancy. So the Sfat Emet says that the reason why it had to be given this way is because whenever you're going to start something for the first time, you have to be 100% invested in it. You got to make a big deal out of it. You got to do the grand opening. You got to have the big ribbon ceremony. You got to have the balloons. You got to have the confetti out. You got to have your ads out. When you're doing something for the first time, you got to go big. He says that the reason why we were zocheh, the reason why we merited to have the second luchot, is because of the inertia of the first luchot. The strength, the emphasis that was put on the first ones were so profound that's why we were merited the second one. You can't start something with a lackluster, response. You got to go in really 100%. Everything you got to throw it out there. The Jewish people, for the first time now, were choosing to express, channel, celebrate, worship, practice, observe their Judaism for the first time with using their own free will. For 1,000 years, from the time the Torah was given, those 1,000 years were called the years of coercion. And that even though Jews may have done whatever they did as far as their practice, it was a lower level. And that now the Jews of Shushan, for my Persian brothers and sisters, right, your ancestors, all of our ancestors, but theirs who stayed much longer, were part of a group of people that dedicated themselves or rededicated themselves to their Jewish identity. And my question to us today, we're 2,400 years later. Okay, we built the Second Temple, and that was destroyed too. And the truth is, the whole Second Temple era was really just a vassal state. Israel never had its own autonomy. Even under Mattatyahu, it was a small section, not all of Israel. The kingdom was divided. For the last 2,400 years, Jews have not had a true place of power to call, or a place that they could point and say, this is ours. It's been broken. And today, at the end of this timeline, Jews are at a point where we're struggling with our identities again. Well, what does it mean to be Jewish? What does it mean to you to be a Jew? What did it mean to our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and our ancestors before us? Why is this an important conversation to have right now? Well, I'm going to tell you two reasons why I think it's important. Number one is I truly believe that the next 2 to 3 years is the world is going to go through this very turbulent phase. And I think that whenever the world goes through a turbulent phase, I don't think this, I know this, Jews are always at the epicenter of it. We're at the core of it. Because we don't believe that the world rumbles and shakes and goes through its hardships for naught. It's always for a reason, and somehow it's tethered to us. And by the way, I have proof. Ready? Look at world history the last 3,000 years. Look at it. Just study it yourself. And look at every major civilization, every major economy, every major academic explosion always has one common thing throughout history. You know what that is? Some dude with a yarmulke sitting there in the back room doing something. It's the way it is. Why is that the case? I don't know. It just is. So, and I'm a very big believer that history repeats itself. And if you're not a student of history, you are doomed. That's right. To repeat its mistakes. You're doomed. And I don't want to repeat those mistakes. I want to know that I'm in a position where I can be the best me making the best decision. So number one is if something challenging is going to come, and I believe it will come, then you need to be ready for it. And the challenge I'm talking about is going to be a challenge of your identity, who you are. Now, it's not so bad. I can walk around with a kippah in Manhattan. It's not so terrible. It's true that anti-Semitism in New York, in just New York, forget about just in the United States, but in New York alone, in New York, anti-Semitism has gone up by 1,800% in the last 3 months. Okay? Jews make up less than 6% of the American population, and 75% of all hate crimes in America are experienced by Jews. That's crazy numbers, right? These are crazy, scary numbers. And my philosophy is that if people are going to hate me for being Jewish, then I better know what the hell that means. What does it mean to be a Jew? Because unfortunately, for many of us, and maybe not for people in this room because you're special because you're here tonight, but for many of our peer, family, friends, being Jewish is something that you just kind of inherited. I don't know if we could all say, Kimu v'kiblu, I would pick this right now. I have a suspicion that if I did a secret poll of this room right now, and I gave you the ability of opting out of being Jewish without any repercussion, right, just to do whatever you want to be chofshi, right, I have a strong suspicion that more than 50% of the people in this room would push that button. And to me, that's sad. I would never push that button. And I think that it comes from two different layers, two different issues. Number one is that many of us, we think we believe in God, but we really don't. We don't really believe in God. We like the idea of there being a God when it's convenient for us. But then when it's inconvenient, we just really don't like it. He gets in the way of me having a good time. He gets in the way of my secret desires, right? And it's too much responsibility. Like every minute of my day, I gotta be good. I can't be bad. I can't waste my time. These are hard things. But at the core, you have to ask yourselves, not what does it just mean to be you, but what does it mean to be someone that inherited this thing called Judaism? So you inherited it, right? You didn't work for it. You did nothing to be part of this. Automatically, you're part of this group. Your IQ as a whole has gone up by like 20%. I don't know if you deserve that, but it has gone up because Jews have a crazy high IQ, right, on average. Right? There are all kinds of stereotypes that are given to you just because of who you are. There are certain jobs you'll get more easily because of your background, right? That's changing. There was an article that was published 2 weeks ago in Tablet magazine called "The Vanishing Jew." Anyone read it yet? If you want, I'll send it to you. It's the saddest article I've read this year. Okay, and basically what the article is proving, that Jews are being pushed out of every single institution in America, right? We're seeing less Jews in Ivy League schools, Harvard decline, Penn had like a 10% decline of Jewish students, not because they can't get in. The universities don't want them. Government, less Jews in government. It's the first time it's ever happening for us as Jews in America, where the fad was, well, how can I pull more Jews to be more diverse and inclusive? Now, the fad in institutions in America is how do we get rid of our Jews? We want less representation, or we want a very specific type of representation. Right? So this is happening in large numbers very quickly because most people don't really know what it means to be a Jew. And what I want to do tonight, very quickly, I don't know how I'm going to do all of it, but we'll try, is to try to have this conversation about what is Jewish identity? What does Jewish identity look like? What is it supposed to look like? Now, I know what you're thinking, and I want to I want to remove this thought from you. Yes, I am Orthodox. Okay. Yes, I have a title called Rabbi. If I could get rid of it for you, I would, but I can't. Maybe it'll make it easier if I didn't have the title. But if we could remove those two concepts, me being Orthodox and a rabbi, I don't want you to think that what I'm suggesting has anything to do with practice. That's separate. How you observe your Judaism is personal and private. I'm not here to tell you what to wear. I'm not here to tell you how to keep Shabbat, how to keep kosher. Do I believe that there are certain standards? Yes, there are. Do I believe that every single Jew can live by those standards? No, I don't. I don't care if you do or don't. I care whether or not you care about your own development. I care as to whether or not you're still thinking about there being an ideal called Jewish law, belief. These are things that we need to work on. And all too often, as we get older, we kind of slide in, okay, this is who I am now, take it or leave it. That's not being Jewish. That's conforming, that's apathy, that's being apathetic, that is certainly not being Jewish. You don't want to keep Shabbat, I shake your hand, I love you, it doesn't matter what you do. I'm not here to judge anybody. But I'm here to remind you that there's a truth called Torah, there's a truth called Borei Olam, God, okay? And we have to reconcile whether or not we actually accept those truths. Okay, so for me, the conversation of identity actually begins with belief. And if you're struggling with your belief, certainly you're going to be struggling with your identity. But make no mistake, if you're in this room, you come from believers. You come from people that had tremendous amount of belief, a very deep spiritual connection to God. There was a time where there was only one synagogue. It was a Orthodox synagogue or a traditional synagogue. And it didn't matter what you practiced or did not practice, every Jew saw each other as part of a greater whole. We recognize that Jews are different, but our differences is what makes us strong. And instead, in the world that you and I live in, we've created all kinds of boxes, denominations, sub-denominations, subcategories, and we made ourselves weaker. We're not stronger. The institutions that Jews have created have weakened our faith, have weakened our emunah, right? And the reason for that is simply because we are no longer put into a place where we could take ownership of our own beliefs. Oh, I learned that already, Rabbi. I got it, I know that. No, you don't. Because you don't know Jack. Right? And the truth is that the more I find that a Jew studies his own system of beliefs, the more surprised he or she is about the information they're gathering, because you're an adult now and what you think you know is tethered to a 5th grade education. And now you're adults with adult minds, with adult questions, and you're leaning on information that is outdated. So what I would like to do over the next 10 weeks with you is have a conversation about how we could reconnect to God. That's what I want to do with you. And today's conversation is about identity. Who am I? Superheroes were invented by Jews. Right? We know that. The biggest superheroes, Superman, was invented by Jews. Marvel Comics, all Jews. Most, even DC Comics, Jews. All these comic books had lots of Jewish players behind them, and because Jews have always struggled with a dual identity, right? On the one hand, I have my Goyish identity, right? What I do when I'm outside, right? And then, at my house, my synagogue, I have my own Jewish identity. My star comes out. All of a sudden, I stand straight. I don't know Lashon Hara. Only make a bracha. Everything is loud. It's beautiful, right? It's my Jewish identity. It's my secret identity. But my real identity is, how I project myself at work and friends and so on and so forth. And this is the core of the problem. This is exactly what Mordechai Hanavi was dealing with when he was faced with the Jews of Shushan. We created a schism. We're the only group of people that can't call ourselves a Jew. I'm a Jew. You don't say that. You say, I am ish. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I am. Depends on the mood I'm in, just ish, like yellow-ish, But a Christian just says, I'm a Christian. Because when you say that, you say a word that is aligned with who you are on the inside and the outside. He's not Muslim-ish. He's a Muslim. Allah Akbar, they say it loud, they're not afraid. Right? But a Jew is, I'm Jewish, and you have these celebrities that talk about it. Yeah, But those are people that are at the end of their Judaism. It's going to end their lines. It's going to end with them. What does God want from us? This is the first source over here on your sheets. If you don't have it, if there's not enough copies, I put it into the WhatsApp group. There's still sheets over here. This is what he says. This is the words of God, and this is what God is telling you. And I like starting with this. Okay, he says, "Ask now about the former days." It means ask your parents, your grandparents, before your time, from the day that God created man on earth. Ask from one end of the heavens to the other. Has anything so great as this ever happened, or has anything like this ever been heard of? Has any other people heard the voice of God speak out of fire, as you have, and lived? Has any God ever tried to take for himself one nation out of another nation by testings, by miraculous signs and wonders, by war, by might, by my mighty hand, and an outstretched arm, or by great and awesome deeds, like all the deeds the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your very eyes? If our story is so make-upable, how come other people don't have the same story? That's what he's saying. He's saying, ask. Forget about me. Ask. Ask your grandpa, your great-grandpa. Ask your ancestors. Why do we do this stuff? Where does it come from? Is it true or not? What do you believe in? You're not sure if there's a God? Well, ask questions. Well, if this whole thing called being Jewish is sketch, a bunch of guys were sitting in a cave, twiddling their thumbs, you know what we're going to do? Let's come up with a religion. Let's figure out a way. We'll create the opium for the masses, and we'll call it Judaism. And these are some of our tenets. Ready? Saturday, no work. Well, that's good. Yeah, but you can't separate your cucumber from your lettuce. If you do, you'll burn in hell. Okay? You got to dress a certain kind of way. You can't touch your spouse during certain times of the month. There's these ritual baths you got to go to. You got to wear these leather straps. You're going to love this. We're going to make the men wear leather boxes on their arm and head. Okay? And they got to do this every single day. And they got to make blessings. And we're going to make them wear these four-cornered garments, right? And we're going to put tassels on them. Okay? And then kosher, we're going to make them eat kosher. This is going to be great. We're going to make them slaughter their animals in a specific kind of way. We're going to restrict their diet. Okay? We're going to do all kinds of things to limit their ability to pleasure. We're going to force them to all get circumcised. This is the best one. We're going to get them to get a bris. It's the best. They're going to love this. Everyone's going to want to sign up tomorrow. We're going to get the masses to join Judaism. By the way, I could prove to you that was never the case. The early Christians figured out a way of keeping the best parts of Judaism without any of the laws. Because if I was creating a religion from scratch, it would be Christianity. No obligation, no responsibility, no intellectual rigor. You come and you go as you please. No change to your heathen lifestyle. I'd be a Christian for sure. It's so easy. But to be Jewish, a practicing, believing Jew, it's demanding. It's hard. And it's designed to be hard. Remember why? Because Judaism wasn't designed for losers. It was designed for winners. It was designed for peak performers that want to live a life of excellence. It was designed for people that want greatness. If you were an Olympian and you were training for the Olympics, you have a very strict diet, a very strict regiment, tremendous amount of focus, dedication. You can't do whatever you want whenever you want. Judaism is for greatness. It demands a level of intellectual and spiritual commitment. I get it. I know why so many Jews have a hard time with it. I know why they call themselves Jewish. They wish they could be a Jew. Because they're just losers. It's too hard for them to keep up. And Judaism, by the way, there's nowhere in Judaism that says you have to do everything. The Jewish philosophy is you are rewarded for your efforts. I believe sincerely that if you never keep one Shabbat, if you don't keep kosher, you don't believe in it even, but you tried your whole life to truly figure it out, that person to me has Olam Haba 100%. You're not in control of the results, but the effort, that's all you. That's all us. How much time you put into trying to discover this thing's truth, that's on you. Whether or not you accomplish it is not your responsibility. That's on God. But you need to put in your efforts every single day. You have to have a plan. How am I conquering this thing? God says to Abraham, Lech lecha ma'atzecha, leave your country, your people, your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you will be cursed, and all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. Do you believe that? What would you do if God told you that? We have another quote. Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation. All the nations of the earth will be blessed through him, for I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about Abraham what he has promised him. God is making it very clear. There's something special about Abraham and his family. Now, he calls us the nation, a nation chosen from all the nations, that we are the blessing. Look what the Gemara says. The Gemara says in Megillah, I will multiply your seed like the stars of the heaven and the sands of the seashore. Reshit, right? Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai explained, this people is compared to dust and to the stars. When it sinks to the dust. But when it rises to the stars. The Jewish people are the best and worst people on the planet. Right? We all know this all too well. We're our best, worst enemy and friend at the same time, all rolled in one. Right? God says you'll be both the stars and the sands. Bereshit Rabbah, Lech Lecha, I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth. As the dust of the earth is from one end of the world to the other end, so your children will be dispersed from one end to the other end. As dust is trodden by all, so will your children be trodden by the people of the world. As dust outlives all the vessels of metal, while it endures forever, so will all the people on the earth will cease to be while Israel endures forever. So, what is this particular midrash telling us? Could you sell this to me for the first time? Oh yeah, you know what? Your kids are going to be like the dust of the earth. They're going to be scattered like dust across the planet, and they'll be trampled upon by the nations of the world. Just like dust is trampled by everybody. Right? But at the end of it, somehow we survive. We become bigger and greater for it. Who wants that for their children? I don't want that for my kids. I have no choice. I've inherited it. I've inherited this thing. Isaiah, God says, He calls you righteous. I will take hold of your hand. I will keep you, and I will make you to be a covenant for the people, for the light of the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to free captives from prison, and to release from the dungeons those who sit in darkness. This is the Jewish mission over here. Okay? It's called a Or Legoyim. We are supposed to be a light unto the nations. Our job as Jews, part of our identity, is to challenge the world around us. We're okay. We don't mind being downtrodden. But we need to work on becoming individuals that inspire the people around us. You know what we're all waiting for? We're all waiting to be inspired. We take a passive approach to our Judaism. I'll go to a class and I'll be inspired. I would love for you to teach a class about how to inspire others. Everyone here has so much to give. Everyone here has so much to impart to the world, but how do you create a space for yourselves to give back? How are you developing the deepest parts of your soul? How are you expressing your spirituality externally so that the world around you is aware of it? Not in a snobby, judging kind of way, but in a way like, wow, like that person is so amazing, I want to be like that. That person is so caring, so kind, so generous, so loving, understanding, patient. I want to be like that. What are we doing to express the best of ourselves? That's what Isaiah is saying over here. Shir Shirim Rabbah, your name is like fragrant oil poured out. And as oil brings light to the world, so Israel brings light to the world. As it says, nations will come to your light, the kings to the brightness of your dawn. Same idea. Rabbi Yeshua Halevi in Kuzari says, Israel is to the nations as the heart is to the limbs of the body. We are at the center, the core of everything, my friends. You can't escape it. Albert Einstein, the purest of knowledge for its own sake, an almost fanatical love of justice, and the desire for personal independence. He wasn't a religious person. These are the features of the Jewish tradition which make me thank my stars that I belong to it. Even irreligious Jews, not too long ago, were very proud to be Jewish. But the current environment that we're in, with the current philosophy in the postmodernistic world, being Jewish is a disease. Okay, Milton Himmelfarb, right? He says, each of us Jews know how thoroughly ordinary he is. Yet taken together, I love this quote, we seem caught up in things great and inexplicable. The number of Jews in the world is smaller than a small statistical error in Chinese census. Yet we remain bigger than our numbers. Bigger things seem to happen around us and to us. Why is that? You think it's an accident? You're part of a story that's unique. You have a special tale. There's a constant reaffirmation of your uniqueness, and we somehow dismiss it. Rabbi Lord Emanuel Jacobowitz, he says that we have become together too inward looking. This is a criticism. With our horizons largely limited within the ghetto walls, we have erected to separate us from the rest of our people and from the human society beyond. Preoccupied with the burning problems of our own survival, we have lost sight with our assignment as a light unto the nations. We're here for a mission, my friends. Right? It's not just to make money. It's here to involve ourselves in the challenges of our society and try to come up with solutions to make it better and greater. You can't fix the world around you if you're broken inside. So the first place to start is in an inner avodah. Atem reitem, you see what God has done, what God did to Egypt. He carried us out on eagle's wings. By the way, the Egyptians, again, I say this all the time, there is no obelisk, there is no hieroglyphic in Egypt that says the Jews lied. Think about that. For 3,300 years, the Jews have said that we left Egypt and that God destroyed their country, their economy. There's no evidence of anyone calling us a liar. Nowhere. The ancient world does not disagree with the Jewish tales. If anything, there's more and more corroboration telling us that the story actually happened. Obelisks in Egypt talking about the famine, talking about plagues, talking about the disasters, economic fall, a group of people leaving. More and more evidence all the time coming out. But zero. If I was an Egyptian and I read the Torah, and by the way, they all read it because it was translated into Egyptian, right? I would make a huge, like a totem pole, and I'd say, the Jews are liars. It doesn't exist. No one has ever called us liars. They call us the people of the book. They'll tell you the story is true, but we made some changes along the way, but it's true. Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. Devoid of power, splendor, bereft of the brilliant show of human grandeur, Israel was upheld by its faithfulness towards the All One. Others state everywhere, and all the glory of human power and arrogance disappeared from the face of the earth, while Israel, though devoid of might and splendor, lived on because of its loyalty to God and His laws. No matter how far we have removed ourselves, somehow God has kept us connected. Rabbi Soloveitchik, despair and resignation were unknown to the man of the covenant who found triumph in defeat, hope in failure, and who could not conceal God's word that was, to paraphrase Jeremiah, deeply implanted in the bones and burning in his heart like an all-consuming fire. That's the kind of relationship Jews had with their Judaism. They felt it in their bones. They felt it in their soul. They lived it. They felt it. And it didn't matter how broken they were. What gave them the ability to overcome their circumstances was their deep connection to their faith. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks wrote a book called Future Tense. I would recommend reading all of his books. The next 3 quotes are his quotes. We'll go through them very quickly. And then I want to do like a quick synopsis. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to go through a quick synopsis at the end, and then I want to kind of hear from you a little bit. The future tense. It says, long ago, one man and one woman heard a call telling them to leave their land, their birthplace, their father's house, and begin a journey. That was Abraham. There was nothing conspicuous about them, nothing to suggest that the path on which they were about to embark would eventually change the history of humankind. The man was not a military hero or a miracle worker. He was not a revolutionary or a guru with thousands of followers. He had absolutely nothing in common with the heroes of epic or myth. Yet, there can be no doubt that he was the most influential human being who ever lived. Today, 2.2 billion Christians, 1.3 billion Muslims, 13 million Jews More than half of the 6 billion people alive today claim descent, biological or spiritual from him. His name was Avraham. The name of the woman, his wife, was Sarah. What was so special, new about Avraham, was not so much the God he worshipped. According to the Hebrew Bible, Avram was not the first monotheist. Adam was. What Avram initiated was the idea of faith as a journey undertaken by a people in the search of the promised land. What does that mean? Avram Avinu wasn't unique. He lived during the time of Noah. Noah died when Avram was 54 years old when Noah died. Right? He could have asked him about God and his beliefs. Avram comes to his own conclusion on his own. But what makes him unique is his idea of having bitachon, trusting God in search of a higher truth. That's what made Avram straight. God promises Abraham, I'll give you children. Does he have kids? No. I'll give you the land. Does he have a place to bury his wife? No. Right? He's struggling with his faith. And that's what makes him great. His greatness comes from his ability to overcome the struggle. He carries on. The dignity of difference. God, the creator of humanity, having made a covenant with all of humanity, then turns to one people and commands it to be different in order to teach humanity the dignity of difference. Biblical monotheism is not the idea that there is one God and therefore one truth, one faith, and one way of life. On the contrary, it is the idea that unity creates diversity. Such a powerful line. Only Rabbi Sacks. This is the non-Platonic miracle of creation. What is real, remarkable, the proper object of our wonder is not the quintessential leaf, but the 250,000 different kinds that actually are. Not the idea of a bird, but the 9,000 species that exist today. Not the meta-language that embrace all others, but the 6,000 languages still spoken throughout the world. Judaism is about the miracles of unity that creates diversity. That is our strength. Our strength comes from our ability to respect people's differences, to recognize that everyone's not going to be like me, to find common ground in people that are very different. The secret of Jewish continuity is that no people has ever devoted more of its energies to continuity. The focal point of Jewish life is the transmission of heritage across the generations. Time and again, in the Torah, we are drawn to dramas of the next generation. Judaism's focus is his children. Abraham's first words to God are, "What can you give me if I am without children?" Rachel says, "Give me children, for without them, it is as if I am dead." To be a Jew is to be a link in the chain of generations. It is to be a child and then to be a parent, to receive and to hand on. Moses received the Torah at Sinai and handed it on. And so must we. Judaism is a religion of continuity. The easiest way for you to feel a sense of belonging to your Judaism is to put yourself into a position where you could give something back to the Jewish people. Whether it's volunteering, whether it's teaching, whether it's giving time somewhere, you figure out how to do that. But there's no question that for me it's easy. Like I'm so blessed. I've chose a profession that allows me to live my identity, that allows me to express the things that I truly believe very, very, very wholeheartedly. But not everyone has that. For me, it's about trying to inspire another generation of people to think more critically about their belief, to give them the hope, the ability to recognize that what they do or don't do is irrelevant, but the real question is, where do you want to go? And what are you doing to get there? To defend the land, we're almost there, you need an army. But to defend freedom, you need education. You need families and schools to ensure that your ideals are passed on to the next generation and never lost, or despaired of, or obscured. The citadels of the library are houses of study. Its heroes are teachers. Its passion and education in the life of the mind. Moshe realized that a people achieves immortality not by building temples or mausoleums, but by engraving their values in the hearts of their children, and they on theirs, and so on until the end of time. There's so many people in our community are so passionate about building synagogues and want to donate Sifrei Torah and build synagogues, but they will have a very hard time giving any kind of money to any kind of programming for Jewish continuity. Right? I'd much rather they'd much rather have their name in lights on a synagogue and spend millions and millions of dollars on that, even though it's really a mausoleum for their name, versus build the education, the experiences for the next generation to figure out a way of holding on to their Judaism. Michael Steinhardt, who is a self-proclaimed atheist, says that he started Birthright because he believes in Jews as a people. May not be a believer in God, but he's definitely a believer of the Jewish God. Right? He doesn't believe in the Christian God, but he believes in the Jewish God. What other person will give $250 million, raise another $250 million, then got the Israeli government to match it, $500 million. They got $1 billion to start Birthright. Why did he start it? If you looked at the Pew study in 2001, which is the year Birthright was started, okay, we saw then that the assimilation rate in this country was over 50%. We knew then that today we would have a decline of Jews in America. And not only in America, if it's the assimilation rate, by the way, in America is 50%, in Europe it's 72%. It's worse. Although those numbers have changed. In America, it's much higher now. It's closer to 60% already. And it's accelerating. Here's a man who had foresight, who was deeply in love with his Judaism. He has a hard time believing whatever he believes in, but certainly he's a believer at his core. He did something. He wanted to create something that would give people the ability to connect to their heritage and their faith. Right? He was inspired by it. Rabbi Sacks, this is the summary of this lesson. Okay? This is what he says. He says, for 40 centuries, Jews have held tenaciously to the belief that we have been charged with a sacred mission to sanctify life by being God's ambassadors to the world that has all too often worshipped the multiple forms of what Nietzsche called the will to power. We were called on to write a different story that tells of the beauty of holiness and the call of compassion, to tame the savages of man and make gentle the life of this world. Judaism is placed at the center of its striving some of the most healing of all sacred imperatives. The importance of love and loyalty, marriage and the sacred bonds between husband and wife, parent and child, education and the life of the mind, justice, equity and the rule of law, compassion, charity, human dignity, the bonds of belonging and community, memory, history, imperishable hope. We seek God not just in the remote heavens or the innermost recesses of the soul, but in ordinary life, with its pleasures and pains, fears and hopes, conflicts and consolation. Judaism believes not in abandoning earth for the sake of heaven, but in bringing fragments of heaven down to earth in simple deeds and celebrations. For that is where God is found, not in wealth, power, fame, success, or any other of the myriad substitutes for life, still less in violence and terror, but in life itself, living, breathing. Neshama, the Hebrew word for soul, means breathing. Loving, giving, caring, praying, praising, giving thanks, defeating tragedy in the name of hope and death in the name of life. Our task is to be true to our faith and a blessing to others. A blessing to others because we are true to our faith. To be a Jew is to bring redemption. One day at a time, one act at a time, every mitzvah, every kind word or deed, every act of sharing what we have with others brings the divine presence into the world. By recognizing the image of God in other people, we help to make the world in the image of God. That's what Jewish identity is about at its core. Jewish identity is saying that I am a partner with God in his mission. So yeah, I see this as there's a lot of things here that are difficult for me. I get it. You're stuck, challenging. But you have an opportunity of being God's partner. You can bring the most amount of holiness into this world through your small acts of kindness, love, caring, and giving. We're ending the month of Adar. There's no greater happiness. And simcha ka'atarat asfekot. There's no greater happiness than the resolution of doubts. The simcha that we're referring to in this month is not about partying more. It's not about drinking more. Not about that at all. The simcha of this month is connected to a person establishing a clear understanding of what their mission is in life. Happiness is resolving your doubts. What does it mean to be you? Clarifying it. Ask the question, what does it mean to be the best you? Are you on that path? Resolve it. If you could do this with the next, 11 days we have left in the month of Adar, you'll be ready to fly and truly be free in the month of miracles, in the month of Nisan. It's going to be, the weather for the next 24 hours will be really gloomy and ugly. Sorry. It's just a Monday, right? But if you haven't had a chance yet, I challenge you all to walk over to a tree. Okay, and I want you to pull down a branch and look at the buds that are beginning to blossom already. Spring is in the air. This cold, dreary, ugly winter is about to come to an end. The time of holiness and greatness happens in the summer months. There's the most amount of Kedusha in the world. You want to tap into it. You want to pull that spiritual power in. You want to change your mazal. Your mazal. You want to grow into something more. You got to ask yourselves now, who do you want to be? Stop being on the fence. Stop making excuses. Stop worrying about the injustice. Is that law fair, Rabbi? Last week, I spent a big chunk of my week helping a married man with 2 children get out of jail. He was arrested for possession of cocaine and fentanyl. The police came to his house with a search warrant. Someone snitched on him, I guess. He's a user, and he was arrested. He was in jail for 5 days. And the bail was $50,000, which we helped raise. He needed lawyers, about $25,000. He's a Jewish guy, just his own mission unclear. He said he wants to be a good dad. That's what he really wants. He was like, I really just want to be a good dad. How does someone who's married, who says he wants to be a really good dad, end up in jail for possession of cocaine with the intent to sell and fentanyl? How does that happen? And he happened to have a machine gun in his house, and that made it even worse. He was legally allowed to have it, but the police said that he tampered or that he didn't, and they're going to drop that charge. But like the charges look really bad. Automatic weapons, drugs, first degree, second degree, and with intent, and so on and so forth. Like, it was horrible, horrible. They came in with the real intention of destroying this guy's life, even though he's just a junkie. And that, my job, I'm helping him kind of clean himself up a little bit. Where do you start when you hit rock bottom? Number one is, don't allow yourselves to hit rock bottom. It's really hard to get up when you hit rock bottom. But no matter how challenging you think it is, okay, I'm telling you, it can be way worse. Way worse. Stop thinking about what you are lacking and start asking yourselves, what can you be doing to give more of yourselves? How can I build and grow and develop myself? How could I be more patient? How could I be more trusting? How could I be more loving? Whatever, you figure out the adjective you need to work on, but then do it. Make a meeting with a rabbi, find a mentor, come up with a plan, have the conversation, be proactive. In the summertime, you're like, oh my gosh, it's summer, I got to start working on my dieting, I'm going to go out, it's the winter, the sweater season is over, no more excuses, I got to start, it's got to be that way, you got to feel like, I got to get up, I got to do something about it. You're living in a time where you have more resources to understand your Judaism, your identity, more than any other time in history. And we are so lethargic when it comes to trying to understand it because it's so available to us. Don't wait for a time in our history or in our future where we won't have that ability. You'll be kicking yourselves in the head. How many of you would have said, I wish I spent my time in developing myself so I could become a bigger, greater human being? And then there's something called it's too late. Don't wait until it's too late. The time is now. The month of Adar is a month of Simcha. Resolve your doubts so that together we could experience true freedom together. Be'ezrat Hashem in Yerushalayim. Thank you so much for coming, everybody.